My name is Chris Yee, and I'm making a 3D puzzle platformer called Nectar. In the game, you play as a potted sunflower with its bumblebee companion, using nectar to grow plants, solve puzzles, and manipulate the world. In my last video, I teased that I would start to get into level design, but before I can get into design on a level-by-level basis, I need to figure out the overall structure of the game. So that is what this video will be about, because I've put a lot of thought into it. I've brainstormed many ideas, weighed some pros and cons of all my options, and I'm going to talk about what my original vision started out as and how it evolved over time. But before I get started, I want to start with a little disclaimer about my devlogs going forward. Now that I'm getting more into level designy type of tasks, I will probably intentionally not be showing a lot of stuff. I want to carefully handpick what I choose to show. I was actually a playtester for a different indie game that does a devlog. I don't want to say which one it is because I don't know if they want me to say, so I just won't. But because they do devlogs and I watch their devlogs, a lot of my feedback wasn't as useful as it could have been because I knew things ahead of time before I even started playing. I want to try to avoid that problem with my game because eventually I will need to playtest my game, and I don't want to ruin things for my playtesters. So I'll be withholding a lot of content from you game-wise, but I will show you what I can. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. So how did I originally vision this game to be structured? One of my biggest inspirations for this game starting out was 2012's Journey. For anyone who's played Journey, you'll know that it's a very linear game. You start in a desert and you work your way towards a towering mountain in the distance, and as you progress in the game, the mountain grows closer and closer. That's kind of how I planned on structuring Nectar in the beginning. Instead of a mountain, Nectar was going to have a large tower that would always be visible on the horizon, and there would essentially be only one path as you work your way towards the tower. Basically, a straight line from A to B. And I like that the size and the position of the tower could act as sort of a measure of progress for the player, also a beacon to keep them oriented, and a linear structure would help me limit my scope. I've always preferred the purposefully crafted approach to level design that often comes with linear games. I'd much rather have that than the procedural nature of what an open world would be. There's only so much a solo developer like myself can do with my limited resources, and a linear game would allow me to focus those resources on specific levels rather than an entire world. It would just let me get more hands-on the design rather than relying on procedural tools. But Nectar is a puzzle game, and with a linear puzzle game, there is the danger of players getting stuck and frustrated with no way to move forward. Obviously, there are many successful linear puzzle games that work extremely well. The Portal series comes to mind. But that kind of thing requires masterful balancing and fine-tuning of puzzle difficulty. It's possible to do right, but everyone's brain works a little different, and what may seem like an easy puzzle to one person may cause another person a lot of frustration and cause them to quit the game and never come back. But there is a way to mitigate this problem, which I've seen pop up in a lot of more recent games, and that is to have multiple puzzles available at once. If the player gets stuck on one puzzle, instead of quitting, they can just go to a different puzzle and solve that puzzle. And then once they've stepped away for a little bit and then they come back with a fresh perspective, maybe the first puzzle comes easier to them the second time around. Some games do this with the level select menu. You solve a puzzle and then two puzzles become available and you can choose which one you want to do. But other games that I've been playing implement this in a different way. So Animal Well introduces several paths to the player to explore at any given time. If the player hits a wall and doesn't know how to go forward, then they can explore one of the many other paths on the map. Outer Wilds does a similar thing. Outer Wilds has actually snuck its way in there as Nectar's other main inspiration alongside Journey, and as you explore outer space in Outer Wilds, you'll encounter paths that seem very mysterious and unpassable at first, so you just go and explore somewhere else, and eventually your exploration of a different area enables you to come back and get past that barrier that you couldn't get through before. I aim to achieve something similar with Nectar. The big problem with both examples that I just used is that both of these games are open world games, and their main gameplay loop focuses more on exploration than it does puzzles. There are puzzles in these games, but the essence of the gameplay is actually just the exploration with a few puzzles sprinkled in. And open worlds lend themselves much better to exploration than they do strictly puzzles, which is what Nectar is going to have. There's also the obvious problem of resource limitation. I already talked about this a little bit, but as a solo developer, I don't really have confidence in my ability to create an open world that doesn't just feel empty. On a side note, I am aware that the team behind Outer Wilds, Mobius Digital, is a very small team too, and that Animal Well was developed by just one guy, Billy Basso. So again, those examples don't really prove the point that a solo developer can't do it. But Animal Well is a 2D game, which is much easier to manage for an open world, and the people at Mobius Digital are just incredibly talented, so I'm nowhere near as talented as them. So no, I will not be making Nectar an open world. There's also a design issue when it comes to open worlds. An open world allows the player to do things in any order, but this is not ideal for a puzzle game, at least not the one I want Nectar to be. Letting the player attempt any puzzle in any order introduces a lot of difficulty balancing issues. How do you scale puzzle difficulty if the player can attempt the hardest puzzle at the very beginning of the game? I know The Witness successfully does this with its open world, but again, I'm nowhere near as talented as Jonathan Blow, so I'm not doing that. But if you do want to build skills and become as talented as Jonathan Blow or Mobius Digital or Billy Basso, a great place to do so is with the sponsor of this video, Brilliant. Brilliant has a wide range of science, math, and programming-related courses to help you broaden your knowledge and learn new skills. Brilliant takes a hands-on approach to learning, so rather than reading a textbook or watching lectures, Brilliant uses interactive examples to test your understanding of the topic. It doesn't force you to memorize things. Instead, it asks you to apply the knowledge that you've learned in order to reinforce that knowledge. It focuses on critical thinking and problem solving rather than repetition. This style of teaching makes learning a new topic both fun and engaging. They have a whole range of topics from data, programming, math. They have a whole thing about how structures and machines work. It's all very cool stuff. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/nerdchomp or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So, I want to give the player options, but I don't want Nectar to be an open world, and I want to have some control over the player's progression. I sketched up a hybrid concept that gives players more choice. There would be areas that you progress through linearly, but within those areas are multiple puzzles to solve in any order. And then to progress to the next area, you would need to solve all the puzzles in that current area. So this allows for more player choice, letting them jump from puzzle to puzzle if they get stuck on one of them, but it also allows me as a designer to manage puzzle difficulty, grouping puzzles together in similar difficulties all in the same area. This solution I found much better than just strictly linear or strictly open world, but I still wasn't fully satisfied. This structure still felt a little rigid, and while there is player choice, at the end of each area the player would still be forced to solve that last puzzle before moving on. And if they get stuck on that puzzle, I have the same problem. So I was looking for a better solution. I sketched up a second concept, this time with 3 separate linear paths, all starting in different places and leading to the same endpoint. It started out looking like this, but I ended up spreading it out, making the design a little more radial, so now it looks like this. And each of the individual paths are essentially the first concept that I sketched up. They're linearly organized areas with non-linear puzzle choices within each area. But there are 3 of them all converging onto the same point, and the player can jump from one path to another whenever they want. If they get stuck on one path, they can jump to a different path to progress on that one. And once they learn more, they can return to that path that they were stuck on originally with a fresh perspective, a better knowledge of the game, and maybe they won't get stuck that time. Theoretically, if each of these little open areas contains 3 puzzles, at any given time the player will have anywhere from 3 to 9 puzzles to choose from if they get stuck, and because all individual paths are still linear, I can control the difficulty along each path. The goal is to have the player naturally progress through each path at a similar rate, so I want to encourage path jumping to introduce variety and make the structure feel more dynamic than just a strictly linear game. So that's the plan right now. If you want to see how that turns out, you can subscribe to this channel for more devlogs like this. If you have more suggestions for how I should structure the game, if you think you have something better than what I came up with, you can comment below or join my Discord server and give me feedback there. The link to my Discord is in the description. And if you want to support the game itself, the best way to do that is to go to the Steam page and wishlist the game. The link to that is also in the description. And once again, thank you to the sponsor of this video, Brilliant. Thanks.